Welcome, everyone, to episode 86 of Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks, the internet's leading all things Charles Band podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jared Hornbeck, a podcaster who turns well water into confetti. But, I'm here, and as always, I'm not alone. Who is exploring the other side of this creepy mirror with me today?
Well, it's me, Steve Guntley, and I'm not a cop when I'm naked. There's nowhere to pin the badge. This is a podcast about outhouse rattling, girl basting, and creamy maggot pies. That's because this is the podcast about Killjoy 2 and Killjoy 3, the first two follow-ups to Full Moon's surprise hit, early 2000s hit.
Steve, I'm sorry, I have to stop you for a second. You need to address Killjoy 2 by its Christian name.
Oh, excuse me. Yes, it is Killjoy 2, Deliverance from Evil.
God, that's a stupid name.
It's so dumb. It's so dumb. And I was wondering watching it. I was like, okay, is this a typo? Did they mishear it? Is this like, excuse me while I kissed this guy kind of like the mishearing thing? But no, it's an intentional reference to Deliverance, which we will get into. But we have an exciting person crammed inside this tiny little clown car with us today. Returning guest, an expert on all things Killjoy. Who is joining us today?
Yes, there is a line of dialogue in Killjoy 3 where one of the characters is referred to as a psycho bitch. And I think that title really kind of sums up anything surrounding our friend Killjoy here, and so I thought it would only be appropriate to bring back one of our former psycho bitches, Stevie Webb, host of Brain Rot, contributor to Evolution of Horror and lots of other amazing stuff. Stevie, we're really excited to have you back on the show again. You did the first Killjoy with us, and I thought you severed all ties, but here you are.
I did. I mean, I'm really happy to be back on such unfortunate terms. So it's a double-edged sword, this one. I'm a completist anyway. So when you asked me if I'd come back for Killjoy 2 and 3, I thought, of course. And of course, now as a sort of self-punishing person, I absolutely have to see Killjoy Goes to Hell, I think,
and Psycho Circus, I think, is the last one. Yeah.
Well, tell you what, we'll look ahead at this spreadsheet for about 6 to 9 months. We'll just schedule you in now.
We'll get that done.
Get some time to process this trauma first, and then before we inflict any new ones on you.
I mean, to be fair, especially with the second one, he really you see where he gets his namesake, because he really did kill my joy.
I made the same comment. I'm like, yeah, this actually killed my joy.
I was going to say that was a text message I got from Steve verbatim.
It's appropriate. Yeah, it came closest. Yeah, we're following up on what is kind of one of the latter day like faces of Full Moon. Killjoy has become one of the title characters, like the big marquee characters for Full Moon, alongside Evil Bong and Ginger Dead Man. And of those three, Killjoy seems to be the one that's at least has the most potential for a crossover audience. Like Ginger Dead Man is probably too stupid of a pill for most people to swallow, and Evil Bong is strictly for like the Spencer's Gift stoner crowd. But Killjoy, killer clowns are an evergreen flavor. Like that. Killer clowns never go out of style, and this is a distinctive looking one.
Yeah, and I think what I really appreciated and respected was them trying something new in terms of, they, especially the first one, they built it around this African American community, and even the antagonist was played by an African American, and it felt really diverse, and it felt fresh, and it felt like they were doing something that hadn't really been done, especially on the scale that they were doing it. And the scene from just the next two, that slowly starts to dissipate, and there's a gradual sort of whitewashing, because even from the second one, the antagonist underneath the makeup isn't played by an African American, and then by the third one, I think you get one African American character and then one that turns up at the end. But it's a shame to see that happening, because I really feel that's what stands out about Killjoy, the original.
Yeah,
it was making those choices, and it was respectable.
Yeah, and Stevie, we talked about in that first episode a little bit about like big city pictures, and then we went into more detail when we were on the Movie Dumpster podcast covering the movie Ragdoll, which is a better version of what we're describing than
Right.
even what the first Killjoy is, where it's like, okay, you could tell Mel Johnson Jr. says, I'm going to give a voice to some of these people to tell some of these stories. And that by the second Killjoy movie, because Killjoy sort of like, it fell into kind of murky water where it was like, it was interested in telling stories of African-American characters, but it was like, hey, here they are. And they're a gang. Like,
or they're drug dealers or they're drug users. Yeah.
Right. And what Ragdoll did that was really interesting was it had these complex characters who were kind of into organized crime a little bit, but there was also like budding, aspiring musicians in it and stuff like that. And so that was a little more all-encompassing of like what you could do if, and again, I think we talked in the first episode how much we hate the term urban horror.
Yeah.
But if you want to be under that umbrella of urban horror, like here are some stories you could tell. Killjoy was a little bit more sort of conflated and silly version of it. But yeah, it definitely starts, that aspect of it tends to seem less important in this second movie because they definitely took a change of direction, not just the fact that they drove out of the city into the middle of nowhere for the events of this movie to take place. But it's sort of unfortunate that it goes from, okay, well, the first one is about inner city gangs. Now it's going to be about like troubled youth.
Yeah, we're sticking with the same theme, and with Killjoy 2, as we can get into here, that's a much more problematic proposition because we now have a white director, we have a white writer, we have a white villain, and we're still kind of trafficking in some of these stereotypical characters.
That's exactly what makes it icky, knowing that it was written and co-written by. Knowing that it was written by two white people and directed by a white person, and they're trying to emulate this African-American colloquialism or dialect, and it's all via stereotype, and it doesn't sit well because, as you say, we're focusing in again on our core group of people being felons and being put to work, and there's just something underlyingly icky about it all, and so when I sort of complain about the gradual whitewashing, I think I would prefer it if white people are going to be making it to not be going down the road that we are in the second one, for sure.
And then we can see, I'll spoil the third one a little bit, but like that movie just kind of does away with the urban horror element of it entirely. And ultimately it's kind of stronger for it. And I feel bad saying that because I think Big City Pictures was like a really noble effort, and I loved the whole idea behind it of like let's highlight specifically African American talents and everything, and just the fact that it didn't hit. They did like 3 or 4 movies. I think it was Killjoy, it was Abominable or Horrible Dr. Bones, and Ragdoll.
Was Crips in there, or was Crips after?
Crips was in there, yeah. So there weren't many, but the few that we kind of have seen were distinctive, and they were interesting in ways. Killjoy 2, I think we need to dig into this here. So Killjoy 2, Deliverance from Evil, was released January 8th, 2002. It's directed by Tammy Sutton, written by Sutton and Douglas Snafer, and it stars Charles Austin, Olympia Fernandez, Debbie Rochon, Logan Alexander, Jermaine Cheeseborough, Nicole Pulliam, Rhonda Clearbout, Choice Skinner, and Trent Haga as Killjoy. Now, this is another rare appearance on our show of a female director, so need to shout it out when we can. Tammy Sutton, she'd been a struggling actress and writer who had entered the Full Moon orbit as a producer on Witch House 3, which I think was this same year or just before. Killjoy 2 would prove to be her directorial debut, which was a mildly controversial choice at the time for what we addressed, that Sutton is a white woman, and the first Killjoy was kind of being marketed as a movie by and for African-American people. She didn't stay in the Full Moon inner circle for too long. She produced the serial killer biopic Spec after this, but then largely she moved on to her own projects, mostly short films or indie horror. Now, they approached Angel Vargas, who played Killjoy in the first movie, to come back, but he was not interested in returning. So they talked to an actor, stunt performer, and writer named Trent Haga. who has been playing the character ever since. Now, he's been around. He'd been working with Troma quite a bit. He's in Terra Firma and Toxic Avenger 4, which is where he met Debbie Rochon. They became very good friends, and she was the one who put him up for this part. And he just, he's been working consistently as an actor and a screenwriter. I did not realize he co-wrote the 2008 film Dead Girl, which is was kind of a little indie hit for a little bit.
Right. And Girl on the Third Floor, I think he did.
Yeah, and
Floor,
Cheap Thrills, the movie with Pat Healy and David Koechner. I haven't seen that, but I've heard that one's really good and really demented. And he's the head writer for the Evil Within video game series, which is a very good series, kind of like the new successor to Resident Evil. So he's been very successful in his own regard. But again, his casting was a little controversial because he is a white person. But yes, so yeah, like we said, the goal of that whole big city market was to emphasize African-American talent, but that sub-label folded. So Tempe Productions, from our buddy J.R. Bookwalter, they stepped in to do this one. Now, J.R. Bookwalter is quoted in Dave J's book, It Came from the Video Aisle, as thinking that this is the worst thing he's ever done, or this is the worst project he's ever been involved in. He considers this the lowest rung of the Full Moon career. And I have to say, it's pretty hard to argue with it. There's another disclaimer I need to add here, okay, because there is an absolutely baffling choice that the streaming services for this movie made.
I'm glad you're bringing this up, Steve, because this was something we talked about off mic, and I'm really curious if there's anyone out there who's trying to do like a watch along or keep up or be ahead of the show if you encounter the same issue. So Steve, take it away by all means.
I sat down to watch the movie. I found it streaming on the Full Moon channel, which was part of my Amazon Prime package. So I'm not watching it through the Full Moon app. I'm watching it on Prime. It's this whole convoluted thing. And they have a copy of Killjoy 2 on there that I just kind of started blindly. I just assumed like there's not going to be multiple versions of Killjoy 2. And it is 13 minutes longer than they say it is on IMDb. All right. The movie is listed as 77 minutes. This movie was 90 minutes. And I'm like, is this a director's cut? Is this something like, and why does this movie look so fucking terrible? Like it has frame rate issues. Everybody's talking like they're drunk. Like, and then Jared watched the same version and he pointed out that like, the movie's been like slowed down and stretched out to fill widescreen, but they didn't like adjust the parameters or anything. They just kind of like stretched it out to fill the frame, and they had to slow it down so that the frame rate would somewhat align. And it looks like absolute garbage. And now the version that's on Tubi is the proper 77-minute version played at the proper frame rate and at the proper speed. And it is a little better. I think this is still one of the most amateurish films I've encountered from Full Moon, just on a purely technical level. But if you're watching two versions and you see that your version is 90 minutes, turn that one off. It is fucking hard to watch. Put it on the Tubi one. It's going to be a little bit better.
And it sounds like everyone is on Quaaludes. Then that is the wrong version, because even like, so Debbie Rochon, fan of Debbie Rochon, tons
love
of
her.
Great stuff, Troma and Full Moon for many years. I think I first noticed it. The movie starts with kind of like an action sequence, and I thought, okay, maybe this is just shot on the most standard def video possible, and it just looks really bad. And maybe there's
like the fake porno that Dirk Diggler makes in Boogie Nights. Like it's got that, but it like lower rent, like lower production quality in this. It's like this faux like blaxploitation 70s cop thing for 30 seconds.
Yeah. And then Debbie Rochon starts talking when they're doing the roll call and giving you backstory for the teens who are jumping into the van.
It's a catwalk, that moment. Yeah.
And
I don't know why they're coming out one at a time and why they're waiting for one person's story to be finished before
and
the next person comes.
she's the way she was sort of emphasizing the way she was delivering the lines. Something didn't sound right to me, and I said I feel like this has to do with the runtime, because I couldn't find another version that wasn't 91 minutes. The Full Moon app version 91 minutes, Prime 91 minutes. So watching it, and I'm going, I think that this is slowed down because of the frame rate. And I said, she sounds like she's drunk. Something is wrong. This is being these one syllable words are being drawn out a little bit too long. So I went and I found it on Tubi, and when I saw that it was 70 whatever minutes on Tubi, I went, all right, let me try. And now, not that I think she's given a ton to do, but the acting choices make a little bit more sense. Like her sort of forceful delivery of the lines sounds immeasurably better when it doesn't sound like she's slurring her words after like 5 martinis.
I mean, but this corrects some of that pacing issues, and it corrects some of the frame rate issues. It does not correct the horrible eye lines that are all wrong. It does not correct the non-existent lighting. It does not correct the terrible performances. We do have to shout out that Tammy Sutton has a role for herself in this movie, where she is a methed up red, or like the world's sleepiest meth head, I guess, like coming out of a trailer and being racist and then shooting people. And I mean, that's like, it's incredibly cringy. And now the interesting thing reading Dave J's book about this movie was that the screenwriter took a lot of inspiration from Deliverance, which is why the subtitle is what it is, and B, from Dusk Till Dawn. Okay, now I love From Dusk Till Dawn. Big fan, a lot of fun. It's a great, like, kind of guilty pleasure movie for me. But if you're thinking of elements to rip off from that movie, the incredibly jarring tonal shift from the middle of the film, where it transitions from like a crime movie to a horror film, is not really the one you want to emulate. It's fun and it works because like both movies in From Dusk Till Dawn are kind of energetic and interesting in their own way, and you can tell like Tarantino directed this half and Robert Rodriguez directed this half, and they're just kind of having fun. This one does not coalesce in that way, to the point where like I kept checking the timestamp. I'm like, all right, how long are we getting into this Killjoy movie before they even mention a clown?
Killjoy 2 at 32 minutes. And checked the title of the movie I was watching. But now that you've said that, everything makes sense, because we'll talk about it a bit, but even after the opening scene, I was like, that's not how you open a killer clown movie.
No, it's truly jarring, because like, I think we get the first mention of like voodoo or magic or anything like that at around minute 30. And again, I'm going, my timestamps are based on 90 minutes stretched out cut.
So I'm not sure, according to that one, when the first actual appearance of Killjoy would be, but in the Tubi version, which is the real correct frame rate time one, he pops
38 minutes, isn't it?
35 or 36 minutes. So probably in
70-minute movie.
Your version, probably minute 38 or 39.
Yeah, it was I marked it. First mention of Killjoy was 40 minutes. First appearance of Killjoy was 50 minutes. All right.
That's not okay.
That's crazy. It's crazy.
But that just goes to show you that if you take I think it's like 72 or 73 minutes. So you take 18 minutes of a 72-minute movie, you're taking 1/4 basically of the movie, which means you watch the movie essentially at 3/4 speed.
Yeah.
And that makes complete sense that he first appeared in minute 36 in mine and like minute 49 in yours.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can imagine like with what came up before this, it's just like minute 49, I am twitching in my seat. Like, and Killjoy showing up honestly does not liven things up that much. Okay?
No, and I'm so glad that Stevie is here for this, because one of the conversations that we had when we covered the first movie is how, as cheap as that movie is and as ineffective as it is in so many ways, the one thing that it does really well is introduce the character of Killjoy bit by bit, showing a little bit at a time. Eyes, a set of eyes back in the shadows or something like that, or just a face or just a mouth. They're not interested in that at all here.
No. I mean, it's so jarring when he pops out. I mean, this would be kind of like, your 15 minute or your 45 minutes into, I don't know, the Shawshank Redemption, and fucking Paddington shows up and takes you on an adventure. Like it's so he just shows up as if we've been waiting for him the whole time. And like, truly, I'd gotten to a point where I forgot that he was there.
But he doesn't seem comfortable, Trent, playing this character. And I think that is where it falls short, is because you can see that the person in that costume stuck on that same fucking bit of trees with the floodlight, because that's the only setup with proper light they had, and so it feels like he filmed all of his bits in front of that and they spliced them together. But he does not feel comfortable. It's not in he's in the character. It's not in the skin. In the second one, I would literally bet money it's not the same person, because it's such a shit. In the third one, sorry, because it's such a shift. But I think it takes from it so much. You see someone who is meant to be the most terrifying creature, this ancient party clown demon. I don't know if that can be ancient if it's a party clown. Sure. But anyway, but for me, that I was, as an actor, I was watching someone panicking and sweating and feeling like an idiot, and that was making me so uncomfortable. So unfortunately, everything that we thought was actually the first film had going for it was completely non-existent in this. And don't even get me started on the framing and the choices of angles. I think you touched on it, Stephen, because they're just non-existent.
And Trent Haga had said in the past that he was embarrassed by this movie and portrayal, and then tried to kind of walk it back later and be like, well, it was, the script was written in 8 days, or the script was written in 2 weeks and the movie was shot in 8 days, and that became sort of the Tempe model for knocking these things out. And I'm not really, like embarrassed by the movie, but that was not his story initially.
No, right.
When this was going on.
He comes across as a pretty thoughtful, like smart guy in interviews and stuff like that. So you can imagine that like he kind of probably knew what kind of movie he was
right. And it should be said, like, we're talking about Debbie Rochon, we're talking about Trent Haga, we're talking about J.R. Bookwalter. Like, these are people that we have respect for, and I think this is just an example of where they wanted to crank one of these things out. They were moving away from what worked about the first movie, and they churned something out that JR wasn't proud of, Trent wasn't proud of, Charles Band wasn't proud of. And I feel like it's fine to say that. Like, it's no, to any of these people, but like, this is a universally not particularly well liked. And I have to say, it was done no favors by the time that we chose to watch it, because I went last week to a screening in Brooklyn of this movie that I watched on Tubi a couple of years ago and absolutely fell in love with, which is in some ways a killer clown movie called Out of the Dark.
Okay.
And it's a really fantastic movie. The clown aspect of it is, but I mean, this is a movie
it's so sleazy.
Yeah, it's like Karen Black owns a sex
brothel, basically a sex line,
a sex hotline, and basically it's like Star Andreef starts as the new girl in the line and meets all the girls, and then like Paul Bartel is there, Divine is there out of drag, Jeffrey Lewis is there, Bud Cort is there, like all of these amazing people are in this movie, and it works. And there is a clown mask in it, although the clown isn't a huge part of it.
Right.
But I have that on the brain because I just saw this incredibly fun, sleazy, low budget movie in a big screen. Somebody got a 35 millimeter print of it for the screening, which was fantastic. This beautiful, pristine print. But aside from that, we also have right now Art the Clown in the #1 movie in America, which is wild.
And Joker the Clown is the #2 movie in America. Like people, like I said, it's an evergreen concept. People are always going to be scared of clowns. Yeah. And we've been talking a lot about Tempe movies lately, like from the Tempe era of Full Moon, and they've almost been universally kind of defined by unreasonably low budgets, and limitations on like technicality and things like that. But they all have this kind of scrappy, like fresh out of film school, like can't wait to make a movie kind of energy.
Which is endearing mostly. Usually,
it is. Yeah. And it carries those movies a long way, like beyond kind of the limitations that they have in their production values. Yeah. And I think this movie just does not rise above it because there's a limit. There's just a limit on how much we could endure, and I think this movie
reached mine.
This movie throws too much garbage at you too fast, and then the fact that they end with a really poorly sung hip hop song recounting the plot of the movie.
I cannot.
Dear God, performed by one of the actresses in the film. Pretty embarrassing. pretty a mess.
That moment, I laughed so hard because the song comes on and it's got that, like, when a person is starting to, ask the producer to turn the bass up in their headphones.
Yeah,
It's like it
yeah.
starts off like
Yeah.
Killjoy. Then there's a beat and then Killjoy.
Two.
Oh man.
They had and then the
You don't
it's
say
like
the name of the sequel. That's insane. It's
he's gonna get you. Watch out for that clown. Like, and it's not like the kind of slow jam sort of beat. Like I feel like I'm about to watch Tommy Wiseau have gross sex with some lady's belly button. Like it's that level of cheese. I might try and find it and put it at the end of this episode if I can.
Please do.
It's pretty stunning.
Yeah, we've clipped songs occasionally, like either when they're absolute bangers, like the "Save Me" song from Vicious Lips.
Oh God, yeah.
Had to go at the end because that one's great. This one, just for pure audacity, I think we need to clip this.
I think it just needs to be heard. I think it just needs to be heard. It's pretty remarkable. Yeah, I mean, truly, I was not expecting this movie. Like, I didn't really know anything about its reputation. I just knew that, like, Killjoy was a thing for Full Moon, like in the latter days, and it's a popular enough character. I was really not prepared for this movie to be like near the bottom of my rankings. Like, I just think this is the movie that most feels like they had just given up. And Charles Band talked about a lot of it. Like, this was a really, really tough time for him personally and professionally. Like, he was just really going through it, and his heart was not really in the productions as much as it may have been in the past, and as much as it will be again in the future. But
that's interesting, because I was, when I got to the end of this film, I did kind of say to myself, where was Charles Band? Because even the worst of the worst with a lot of his movies, it has his stamp. There's some sort of flavor, or there's something that he can bring to it, and it just felt very much untouched by him, this film, and it felt like such an anomaly in their back catalogue.
It feels rubber stamped, it feels like, oh, okay, is it shot on film? Okay, good enough. Was the microphone turned on mostly? Kinda. Okay, you can go. It's fine. Release it. But this was effectively a franchise killer for a bit. Like it's pretty unusual for there to be a gap of more than like a year or two between sequels for a Full Moon movie. And we're not going to get Killjoy 3 until 8 years later. And when we get it, it's going to almost ground up reimagining of what the series is.
Well, I have to ask, because I haven't revisited Killjoy 1 since we recorded the episode, but was Killjoy controlling the people's actions and making them inflict harm on themselves part of the first movie?
I don't remember that. I think the telekinetic sort of, it feels like it's an easy way to show someone has power without having to use effects.
Yeah.
And that's what I've gone for in this. And so that's why they've put that in there, because I don't remember it being predominant in the first one at all.
Yeah,
no,
he's not really inflicting harm on the characters. It's like when Stevie mentioned before, when he's first introduced out in the field with those big floodlights, he's not really even interacting with one of the characters. I think it's the character Cece. It's like she has that moment where she had the damn enchiladas and she needs to go to the outhouse, and he's standing outside shaking the outhouse. And it's like, all right, well, there's that. And then
he puts his teeth in,
yeah. And then it's like with I think the character of Ray and Eddie maybe is the name of the other guy, but it's all like,
and even Katja.
It's self-inflicted because he's controlling them through like some kind of telekinesis. So I feel like the what Killjoy's powers even really are in as it concerns like the voodoo aspect of it is very muddy and underbaked in this too. It's just sort of like stuff is happening and I'm just kind of half accepting it while I watch the movie.
Yeah. I mean, this might be a good time to transition to the sequel.
No, I want to spend another hour on Killjoy 2.
You know what? I wish as somebody in the production had said that. Just one more hour. Could have.
Do you know what? I just on Killjoy 2. What I will say, what I think is one of the most criminal things is they know what kind of film they want to make, which is going to be a silly, cheesy, easy horror film. And when you're doing that, the most important thing is your core characters have to fall into one of two camps. We either warm to them and hope for their survival, and we're sort of nervously hoping that they don't get axed, or we dislike them and cannot wait to see their demise. The thing is with this, they didn't fall in either of those. I felt nothing about any of these people.
No.
And therefore, what is driving an audience member to want to know what the outcome is? And I think that is kind of the criminal thing. And the dialogue is just idle and mindless and gives us absolutely.
And so stereotypical and just, like very stock generic characters. There's like the thug who's talking tough, and there's the beautiful girl who's also like, will do anything for drugs. And it's dismissive and it's gross and it's just really poorly sketched out. And these actors perform it terribly, but also like I don't know who could have performed it.
No one. They had a thankless role for trying to perform this script. I'm not even gonna really spend any time saying anything negative about the performances, because it's like what performances could Laurence Olivier have gotten in this movie?
No, I mean, look, I extend a lot of goodwill towards actors. I'm an actor, Stevie. I know you're an actor. Like, you understand that like so many different things go into a performance that are beyond you. Like there's directorial choices and there's the script, and then there's in the end what cut they decide to use. You don't really have control over which line reading they put out there. So, maybe they didn't have anything better, maybe they did, but I do extend a lot of will towards actors because a lot of these decisions are out of their control.
Well, this was directorial ambivalence, and like about
it's
which
just
line
so static.
reading maybe I'm sure there was only one take.
Probably, yeah.
And it's also static. There's no physical interactions almost. There's even that wonderful, and I will say, once we get into all the voodoo and stuff and the character of Kaja, that starts to make you go, okay, there is something here, and there's something a little bit magical, there's something a little bit otherworldly. I mean, and it's all very Spirit Halloween, though everything. But there's even a moment where it's just Kaja with the skull outside with the 3 candles and Killjoy, and they're conversing, but their bodies are sort of directed towards the camera, so they're stood next to each other and not even really looking at each other, and they're just stood still, and everything just felt, as I say, static, and it's such a shame because it just felt like they fixed the camera and then they just kind of got what they could in that space.
Yeah,
and everything is presented so deadly serious. Like, there's just a real tonal issue with this movie where it has these moments that it should lean into silliness and it never really can. Like, yes, I understand there were tonal issues with the first movie too, but then you would get something like the CGI bullet spray and you can't help but laugh at how silly that is. You almost feel like, the guy gets shot, falls over and winks at the camera because of how dumb it is. But like, you don't get anything like that here. It's like
this
no
really
straightforward tone, and nothing is. I mean, this is a movie with a clown, and nothing is playful and silly. And let's see, Steve, do we get that remedied?
You know what? I'm going to say that we kind of do. Let's talk about Killjoy 3, aka Killjoy's Revenge, according to the title on the screen. This was released December 14th, 2010. It's directed and written by John Lechago, and it stars Trent Haga, Jessica Whittaker, Victoria DeMare, Michael Rupnow, Spiral Jackson, Olivia Dawn York, Al Burke, Tai Chen Yo, and Darrow Igus. Now, by 2010, Full Moon's at pretty low ebb. The last decade has not really been great for them. Their really only real successes are Ginger Dead Man and Evil Bong, which they're selling, but it's also kind of lowering the company's stock and their reputation, which was already kind of at a lower
year
place.
In particular, 2010 is cited as being like one of the worst for the company because of the trends of how video rental stores are sort of, and DVD rental stores are sort of going out of business in lieu of the online model, Netflix model. And luckily, Charles Band would adapt.
And that's,
I feel a little bit late though, I found with Charles Band, because he's so based in that wonderful world, but that's why you have this this podcast, and that physical media, it's all about that. And so that transition, I think, came a little bit late. It felt like there was a bit of resistance or reluctance to step up to that.
Yeah, it took a little bit, and I think by 2010, I think you can feel that Charles Band is at least a little more invigorated and wants to sort of forge a new path and kind of find a new chapter for Full Moon. And I think the smart thing that he does is that this is the year that a lot of dormant franchises come back into the Full Moon fold. So there's going to be a new Puppet Master this year. This is where we kick off like Axis of Evil, which sort of starts a new like World War II Nazi themed chapter of Puppet Master, which I have not seen those yet. We're going to get to them in time. There's some mixed reviews on those ones, but some people like the Nazi stuff. We got a new Demonic Toys, which we talked about already. It sucks, but it's new.
I will say, I'm going to stop right there. And regardless of anything that we say about Killjoy 3, from this point on, this movie is Lawrence of Arabia compared to Demonic Toys 2.
Yes, absolutely. Leslie Jordan notwithstanding. And then we get a new Killjoy, which had been weirdly dormant since 2002. The first one was a big hit. The second one was a big stinky turd. And so they needed to kind of take some time and refigure some things. So writer-director John Lechago stepped into the director's chair this time, and he's going to stick with the Killjoy series for the rest of its run. He's also going to direct the Puppet Master spin-off Blade, the Iron Cross, and he's just kind of a well-regarded guy within Full Moon circles. He came into Charles Band's orbit thanks to Stuart Gordon. Stuart Gordon attended a screening of Lechago's micro-budget 2004 debut, Blood Gnome, great title, and he thought that he and Band would really hit it off. I think he makes some smart choices right from the get-go. Now, the biggest choice that I think Lechago makes is that they are doing away with the urban horror element of it entirely. And he talks pretty eloquently about it in Dave J's book. He's like, I understood what they were going for, but those movies were really just kind of dealing with stereotypes. It was trafficking in like pretty hard, even the ones kind of being directed by African-American people were trafficking in these kind of gang stereotypes. And a lot of it is because that's what sold. If you saw the movie American Fiction, they talk a lot about that, about how like, certain Black experiences are the only ones that certain white producers want to represent, where other Black experiences are not that interesting. So Lechago is just like, look, I don't have this experience. I don't have this kind of life view, and I just don't want this movie to be that. And also, they've got a killer clown at the center of this franchise, and they've been doing nothing with that. Like it's right there, So this is he wisely reconfigures this as a horror comedy, a Freddy Krueger-esque like playful slapstick,
very Beetlejuice,
very Beetlejuicy, very kind of stylized horror comedy, which is the way that you should be doing it. And he also built out the roster of other clowns, which is also something that you need to do. And again, it's a very Charles Bandy move. Like, you build out the universe, you have more action figures you can make, you have more characters you can sell.
And on that note, Steve, I mean, if you have Victoria DeMar as Daddy Boop, who that character will appear in subsequent Killjoy movies and then also be written into the comic adaptations of like Doll Man and other Full Moon related comic books. So they created this character that now has transcended just this Killjoy 3. And kind of, the same thing with Freak Show and Punchy. They're simple and really easily recognizable, but at least there's something now in terms of vibrancy and color that matches, because I mean that second movie, I mean despite the fact that it was made for probably under $30,000 and shot on video, so it's totally standard def compared to this shot digitally. But that movie is just everything is sepia tone. Like even Killjoy's outfits, like nothing pops. There's no vibrant colors here. I mean, just based on Daddy Boop's body paint alone, it's much more sort of like seemingly tonally appropriate for where this is going.
Circus.
It's a circus. Exactly. This movie is nice to look at, which is just really shocking coming from the movie that came before. Like this has choices that they made. It has stylistic choices that they made. Like they light it well. Like the actors are well cast. The costume designs reflect like a little bit of thought about the history of clowning. Okay,
Yeah, there's
like
mythology in there as well. Yeah.
yeah, like Punchy the Clown is a classic hobo clown, you know, right?
Yeah.
What was the guy?
Like a Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah, kind of a Charlie Chaplin. And then like the Freak Show is a mime, you know, and then you know, Batty Boop
Like
is
an aerialist, isn't she? Yeah.
kind of an aerialist who is absolutely doing a bad Harley Quinn. Let's just call
Yes.
that out. You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
I
no
read that
offense.
down.
I love the physicality of the performance, and Veronica DeMera. It was her choice to do the body paint. I think she designed a lot of this herself, and like would stand for 6 hours a day getting that applied. So that's a level of dedication that most full moon productions just don't allow time for. And so I love that she did that.
And she's also become one of these people, like when you look at the career of like Victoria DeMar becoming sort of a micro budget scream queen. She spent a lot of years in these kind of movies, and she's been in I think of the both Frankenstein and Dracula in the women's prison, and like when you've got movies like that on your resume, and she's still working. She's a musician, I believe, also. Like these are the kinds of people that we like to champion on the show, and she's giving, like you said, kind of bad Harley Quinn vibes, but also she's kind of got the tattooed carnival woman from Santa Sangre
a little bit,
in there too. And I have to say,
she knows what movie she's in.
She certainly does, and I think that's probably indicative of a lot of the cast members here, including Trent Haga, definitely taking a different approach this time.
So locked in all of a sudden. Yeah, you know, he did not want to come back. You know, he thought this was just kind of like an embarrassing little side chapter. He'd gone on to have a successful screenwriting career, and he got persuaded to come back to the role by a special effects man buddy of his, on the basis of the fact that this film was being shot in China. This was another kind of one of the few movies that Full Moon actually shot over in China. And he just had like, hey, I'm going to jump at the opportunity to go to this part of the world I've never been. And he had such a good time with it that he would stick with the character from here on, you know, and he's finally come around and it's like embraced the character. And I think it's because he gets to make some choices here. He gets to you call me crazy. He gets to play a killer clown in this one, which don't know why they didn't let him do that the first time.
Well, all the clown stuff and the iconography, and I apologize because I feel like I called him Trent Laga before. His name is Trent Haga. I'm aware of that. I think I mispronounced it before, but I love, you know, I live a short, maybe a 20 to 25 minute subway ride from Coney Island. And, you know, freak shows and clowns and these kind of performers,
baseball furies, warriors,
exactly. Man, dodging them all the time. It's such a big part of the aesthetic. I mean, when you go down to Coney Island, whether it's Luna Park or the older parts of the boardwalk itself, there's all of this kind of freak show iconography, all over everything. And so the fact that they lean into that more here had me embracing what they were doing. Right from the get-go, because it's just
delicious. This is how you start a killer clown movie.
Exactly.
When you look at the last one, I cannot tell you the relief that washed over me when this one started with this sort of Aztec monk doing this ceremony. There's some CGI. They've actually, you know, they've got investment for some CGI. And I mean, the bouncing rubber horns on his head are unforgivable, but it doesn't matter. The makeup job is incredible. And I was in. They had me absolutely in. And wow, what a turnaround and what a difference 8 years makes.
I mean, we get
Trent Haga. I can't believe it is the same person, and it does kind of suggest that it was just uncomfortable the first time around, mainly because of all the things we've just said. You know, having this quote unquote urban story and taking over from an African American when that was originally going to be the trajectory of this series. So there's all that against it. And then he is really fucking sitting in his big old shoes in this one, isn't he?
He's having so much fun, and it makes such a difference, you know. Like there are even some good, like cheesy but like funny clown moments, you know, like bringing out the operations manual for a magic mirror. I thought was a funny visual gag, you know. And he's very his energy is very like manic Bugs Bunny type, you know, which is much more suited. Like he felt ill at ease in like the gangland surroundings of the first movie. He felt completely lost in the woods in the second movie, and this one, it's like he has a kingdom that he rules over.
His domain we get to see. Yeah,
there's a hierarchy and there are rules. You know, like he needs to lure people into his mirror to kill them. He can't go out there and kill them, or else it won't free their souls.
That's a great idea.
We have rules, we have a hierarchy, we have characters that are distinctive and funny, and even the human like protags are pretty likable. I liked Jessica Whittaker a lot as the final girl here. I'm surprised she hasn't done more. It looks like her last credit was as a producer on a John Legend TV special. So, you know, she's working, she's doing things, but I thought she's very very striking and very good in this movie.
Yeah, they all did exactly what they were meant to do, and also they know, again, as I was just saying, you know, they know what movie they're making this time, and they are hitting the tone. And so therefore, all of the truly odd choices and narrative holes, you kind of just go, oh yeah, makes sense that they wouldn't, you know, like someone staying at her professor's house, that feels like that's super off the books and not really part of the policy of the education system that you house sit
right.
the professor. Also the fact the first time we meet the boyfriend, he's just holding a football. It's a party. It's like, oh, is he the star quarterback? Of course he is, because he's always carrying a fucking football.
Of course.
It's just wonderful. And then, you know, when he says that, there are no mirrors in the house, and she's been house sitting. And she goes, come to think of it, no, you're right. That is very strange. And so you're telling me she's been house sitting and has only just realized there are no mirrors? Like, how did you put your makeup on? And all these things that they point out. They actually point out and don't explain. They're the things I actually love about this type of film.
Yeah.
I love focusing on those.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I was just so pleasantly surprised. It really is like a night and day transition. I can't think of.
Is that because this time you could see stuff?
There's lighting.
It's literally been lit this time. Yeah. I mean, it was so egregious.
Well, not only that, but the thing that jumped out to me, I know there was the chattering sharp teeth that were underutilized in the second movie, but this movie has like props. Like there's a sledge-o-matic, a giant oversized mallet.
Oh, that's so cool.
The old boxing gloves. Yeah.
Big boxing gloves. I was like, yeah, like that's lean into the silliness, you know, like
the grotesquerie and the cartoonishness, and that is exactly where this franchise should be sitting, which we got, you know, tastes of in the first one, and then it felt like it was lost forever. But they've completely found their stride with this. I'm talking so positively because obviously I'm coming off the back of the second one. I mean, as a standalone film, sure, no, it's not an amazing film.
No.
But a film that doesn't hit 90 minutes, I can have no problems with, really, when it is this fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely the highlight of the Killjoy franchise for me so far. You know, I think it's not maybe as like transcendent as like Puppet Master 3 when we're talking about like comparing third entries of franchises that we've covered, but it's so solid and just finally has an idea of what it should be. And, you know, maybe I don't know if they were intentionally trying to work around like a lot of killer clown tropes early on. I think maybe they wanted to do something different with the killer clown, but I'm glad they came to their senses and just like, look, this is what we have in our tool belt. Let's use it. He lives in clown universe where everything adheres to clown logic. So you can absolutely whip out a giant sledgehammer out of nowhere and take somebody's head off in a pretty good CGI effect. Yeah. Like, and he squishes another guy. Really like, also doesn't look bad. Like, I don't know. They put just a little bit more effort into it.
And that's one thing I want to compliment about this movie is the fact that in addition to leaning into the silly tone and having the props and having the giant mallet and boxing gloves and the boxing ring and it turning very silly, there are moments when they recognize like, oh, this is a moment where the gore should be turned up slightly.
Yeah.
And so there are a couple of moments where there's some organs and entrails and blood, you know, because I could see the thought process of like, well, if we're going to lean totally silly, then we don't want to play into the horrific aspects of it, but they do it in a way where it's very welcome. I mean, we talked about the mime, and he has this baby attached to him.
Oh my God, the freak show. Yeah,
It's weird.
Show the
I love
mind,
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's
it's
a
dark.
freak. Yeah, it's
And
great.
actually, the only sort of semi-scary moment is a moment where Roger looks out the window and we just get this shot of Freak Show with those terrifying eyes that I can't quite work out what they've done there because it doesn't just look like contact lenses. It's so good. I say so good. I mean,
No, that's a
within
good
the
scene.
realm of
Like
it,
that
it
scene,
is.
I thought was pretty
It's creepy.
effective. It was creepy. It was shot. It was lit to where you could. It wasn't overlit, like it wasn't fully like soft soap opera lighting, but it was lit to the point where you can see what was going on.
And again, it shows a little bit more intelligence than it needs to, because if you know anything about the history of like carnivals, traveling sideshows, things like that, so many of the things that they were passing off as horrific mutations were just birth defects, right? They were deformed fetuses in formaldehyde, you know? And so of course, if you have a character named Freak Show, he is going to be like using freaks as a weapon. Like that's a clever idea. Sense. It shows some like understanding of the knowledge of this medium and shows just a little bit more thought went into it.
And I haven't also seen the other movies that follow this, but this one left me thinking, and I could be proven wrong about this, but I'm feeling like we're going to be matched in tone probably in the remaining Killjoy movies.
Right.
To me, there's a feeling of like they kind of figured out how this should go, what this should look like. And I think, because Killjoy's, it's like Psycho Circus. I think wasn't in the 90s, like didn't Kiss tour as the Psycho Circus or Psycho?
Oh, they have a video game. It is a terrible first-person shooter designed by Todd McFarlane called Kiss Psycho Circus for the Sega Dreamcast. And they were definitely tried. There was a lot of Todd McFarlane crossover stuff with that tour.
Those were a lot of words to process.
It certainly was. Yeah, it certainly was. A lot of things that don't exist anymore.
Yeah, we're also getting like I don't know if their influence was felt more in the early aughts to then lead towards this, but like there are moments here when we might be getting close to Juggalo lore.
Look, yeah, I'm surprised it hasn't crossed over yet. But
I'm intrigued to see where the tone goes, and also it felt like in Killjoy 3 they threw a lot of shit at the wall to see what stuck, because you've got all these fairy tale elements with the mirror being his sort of the entry point to his domain. Also the whole Rumpelstiltskin thing about you have to say his name, and that can, so they throw a lot of things in there mythology wise. So I'm interested to see how they iron it out, or where we end up in terms of the clarity of his story, because apparently he's an ancient demon in this one, and I had subtitles on, and every time someone said his real name, I was like, okay, so it's Phillydig, and then I was like, oh no, it's Wingadit.
Yeah. It always says inaudible.
Inaudible.
Yeah. They don't even try.
I have to say, in preparation for this, I almost never watch movies with subtitles on. And when the professor and then our main character, Final Girl, were saying the name of Killjoy, I actually paused the movie, turned my subtitles on, rewound back like 10, 15 seconds, and I'm like, I can't make out what they're saying. Like, what is this? And it was just inaudible every time on that. And I was like, yeah, that's probably like, I don't know. I would like to see what it was in print in the script, because however they're delivering that, it is indecipherable what is that, or maybe that's by design.
Yeah, maybe. But also they have that thing, don't they, as well, about the laughing. So there's so many little elements that they add that they fully commit to, so that you have to laugh at him, you have to say his real name, you have to be in his side of the mirror, all those sort of things.
It led to a surprisingly effective moment, I thought, where Jessica Whittaker is forcing herself to laugh while her friend is being impaled next to her. I'm like, oh, that's kind of a striking idea. I don't want to pull the thread of why a clown would be hurt by people laughing at him, but this is the movie's logic, and they stuck with it. So
yeah, they have
that effective
conversation that's a little bit clunky. He's like, oh, come on, think about it. Clowns, they like laughter. This guy probably doesn't like it. Doesn't. It's tenuous.
Well, apparently,
he's a reverse clown.
Yeah. Well, Jerry Lewis made a movie about it, and maybe we'll be able to see it someday soon.
Someday, the day that Killjoy cried. Yeah, that's coming soon.
Yeah. But she laughs her way into a psychiatric unit as well, because I was thinking when she comes out of the mirror, how is she going to explain this one? Because it's it's going to be a tricky one to explain where your friends are, but they assume she's killed them.
It's
Which
like
is dark.
don't worry,
Yeah.
miss. We're the cops from Poltergeist. We're the cops from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We've seen everything. It's like, no, oh, okay. Well, bear with me. So this is a clown.
And I
Yeah.
like the fact that because one of the things that annoys me in movies is when there turns out to be no real stakes in the movie, and I was expecting that something they were going to do was going to reverse the Killjoy deaths, and that they were going to defeat Killjoy and all of her friends were going to be back again, and it was going to be like, oh wow, well that's how we did this, but they actually don't. They take they kind of stick with all of them being dead, and now her laughing sort of psychotically while the cops talk about trying to get an answer for where she dumped her friends' bodies. And I said, you know what, I appreciate that ending.
Yeah.
Do you know which puppet master they're watching?
I was not sure. I think that is one of it might be the one that they're filming simultaneously.
I think it might be, yeah, because it was very, very Nazi heavy, wasn't it?
Yeah, and both of those movies were shooting in China at the same time. So I'm wondering if like the director of one just sent over dailies for the other, and just like, this.
I'm willing to bet it was Axis of Evil.
Yeah,
I'm thinking so, because Leech Woman was not in 4 or 5.
She comes and goes,
and it was not. She wasn't in 3, which is the other one that had Nazis. So like, yeah, she comes and goes. So. Yeah, but we do have 2 more Killjoy movies to go. Like we said, Killjoy Goes to Hell, Killjoy Psycho Circus. I will say, after watching 3, I am a little bit more excited to keep going with the franchise than I thought I was going to after watching 2. I'm like, oh god, this is going to be a real fucking slog for the rest of the series. And now I'm like, okay, they've figured out something. Like they found their thing, and it's going to be a little more interesting to watch now.
Yeah,
I'm so down for it personally, because that was a sharp drop, and then such a steep high as well. So I'm very intrigued. I'm slightly concerned about the later we get into the years with Full Moon, and it starts for me to become a little bit too slapstick. A lot of the later stuff a bit more like the Baby Oopsie type. But if they stay in this sweet spot, it's endlessly watchable.
Yeah, and John Lechago sticks with the series from here on in. I think he's got a good eye, and I think he's got a good sense of who these characters are. And we've encountered a couple of pretty good, like mid 2010, like Full Moon movie. We just talked about Trophy Heads not too long ago, which was like a real surprise, like a really pleasant treat of a movie. So
yeah, Trophy Heads is a lot of fun, and I liked a lot of things about the second Ginger Dead Man movie because
Passion of the Crust.
Yeah, because it was just really out there, kind of meta, very silly, very tongue in cheek, and I feel like that is where they're landing at this time. And then they're taking some franchises too, because I haven't seen it, but I know around the same time is when the Killer Eye Halloween Haunt came out, and that first Killer Eye is sort of more straightforward, and if it didn't have Jacqueline Lavelle in it, it would be entirely unwatchable.
Yeah,
right.
And apparently,
the second one doesn't have Jacqueline Lavelle in it.
But I think the tone changed. Like I expect it to feel differently than the first one did. But yeah, I think they were doing some interesting stuff. But it's like for every swing that they take to try to be really broad and really silly, you get something like a Demonic Toys 2.
Yeah,
right.
Which really just doesn't work at all.
No, bring back the original Jack Attack. It's once that design changed, that's when it all went downhill.
Yeah, kind of the only one of the Demonic Toys I would save in a fire at this point, is Jack Attack. Like, because I'm an out and proud Baby Oopsie hater on this show.
Oh, you sure are.
Yeah, I'm sticking to those guns. Well,
this will be some inside baseball for our listeners, but sometime in the reasonably near future, Steve we're going to sit down and have an episode. The guest has already been booked. The time slot has already been finalized. We are going to force Steve to watch all 3 Baby Oopsie movies for the same episode.
I mean, you say force me. I don't know that you're going to have a much better time watching those than I am. I mean,
well, there's going to be a slight sense of like Schadenfreude, which will be getting me through it. to some extent. You know, it's
Oh,
like
Yeah.
if I have to
That's
suffer,
good.
I'll get a little bit of pleasure knowing you're suffering more.
It's like you set off the stink bomb and you're still stuck in the room, but you get to do it to everybody else. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, enjoy that. I'll be watching the Seed People.
That's a better choice, probably. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
probably a better choice.
Yeah, we haven't hit that one yet.
No, that's one of the last of the classic era full moon that we have not
Oh,
done.
yeah.
We'll get to that one in time. Well, Stevie, thank you so much for coming back, for half enduring and a couple of Killjoy movies. And it's been delightful to have you, and hopefully we'll get you back for the remainder of the Killjoy saga. But until that time, where can people find all of your amazing stuff? Do you have anything promoted that's coming up for mid-December, I believe is what we said?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for nearly ruining my Christmas, but then just bringing it back at that line.
Like the total line.
But you can find my podcast Brain Rot wherever you listen to your podcasts, and we're currently doing a few little special Christmassy things as well. So yeah, hop on over and find it.
Absolutely. It's truly one of the best horror podcasts out there. It's so much fun to listen to. So definitely check that out.
Well, I've kind of got a taste of my own medicine today because I force people to watch some truly god awful stuff, and then when I was halfway through Killjoy 2, checking that I was watching Killjoy 2, I thought, do you know what? I need to suck it up because it's only fair. It's my turn.
Yeah, I always feel a little guilty because we get such lovely guests on here, and sometimes they don't have a movie in mind. So we're like, all right, we're going to spin the wheel. And we're all going to try this one together. And we've had some of just the nicest, smartest people on the show, and we've made them watch such dog shit like Killjoy 2. So we appreciate you toughing that out.
No, we need to complete it though. We need to do the next couple as well for sure.
Oh yeah,
I need to know how it ends.
And I've been really enjoying the Vicious Varsity series that you've had going on, because I saw, one of my favorites recently dropped. Not to timestamp or date this episode too much, but Sis Boom Blood, You're Dead, the Majorette.
Sis Boom Blood.
Sis Boom Blood. That doesn't even make sense as a pun.
I know it makes no sense. But it's such a great movie.
Stevie, I just want to ask you, since you similarly, sometimes you get people on Brain Rot who don't have a background in horror, aren't familiar with a lot of these movies, don't really know what they're getting into. What is one of the episodes that you've covered in the somewhat recent past that is a standout to you? That is a movie people should seek out and check out. It could even be an episode that you hadn't dropped at this point yet, but will be by the time this is out. I
would say Night School. And I think it's easy to disregard it and have preconceived notions of what it is because it looks similar to Final Exam, it looks similar to Graduation Day, but it's different and it's dark and it is not your bog standard slasher. And I've covered that with Louise Blaine, and I really do highly recommend people check that one out. Yeah, the movie Night School sticks in my craw because there was a Final Exam trivia round at an event that I went to that was about college horror movie taglines. And the A is for apple, B is for bed, C is for co-ed, D is for dead, F is for failing to keep your head. Our team did not get Night School from that. We guessed something else, and I think it was the only one in the round that we got wrong. And so that report card cover of the movie poster for Night School haunts my dreams to this day. It lost you.
I'm really looking forward to checking that out, and obviously every episode on Vicious Varsity. So if you check it out, I'm sure you're going to love it. And if you like what we do, you can jump onto Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a little 5-star rating, maybe a brief review if you feel so inclined to do so. If you want to keep up with the show, you can follow our main Instagram profile at puppetmasters_castle freaks. You can follow me at _giallo_jared or Steve at Minotaur Matador. You can find the show also on YouTube in audio format. And if you check Threads or Blue Sky, you might see some posts from us there. We're hoping to get some more YouTube content up in the future, but it's tough because we're not the only podcast that Steve has to record and then promote. Steve, what else have you got going on?
Well, I also have a show called Cinema Arcade. That's cinema and arcade mashed together because that is what we do. We are watching movies and then playing the video games based on those movies. So we are months ahead of our recording schedule over at Cinema Arcade at this point. So anything I promote now would have been out for months already. But we did just record an episode with Jared Hornbeck talking about Nightmare on Elm Street, the great NES game and somewhat less remembered movie. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to dig into that one. So definitely check that out wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to check us out next week. Now, this is a bit of a this is subject to change, so I'm going to put this in here just in case I need to come in and change it again. But
yeah, I think we're going to end up adding something to that episode, so we can say what's coming up for partially at least. But people who are familiar with the movie you're going to mention will understand why. We probably need to lump it in with something else, but it will be seasonally appropriate.
Absolutely. We'll be talking about a movie called The 12 Sleighs of Christmas, which is it's a short, so like we do there's some anthology stuff in there that we can find, but it is going to be a pretty short movie in general. But yeah, we're going to be talking about some holiday horror, which is always fun.
Yeah, not sure yet at this point what we're going to piggyback onto that episode, but if we can find something that we feel like is an appropriate companion piece to the 12 Sleighs of Christmas, we will do that. But we do want to try to keep it somewhat in the holiday spirit. I think we kind of ignored it completely last year. This year we're feeling a little bit more festive.
Well, it's a market that Full Moon has not fully capitalized on, and I feel like there are so many terrible, like, evil Santa movies. Like, you could absolutely jump in and get on this, but yeah, they haven't really exploited it as much as they could.
Because they went into kids' films, when they did like Prehysteria and Pet Shop and stuff like that. So just mashed the two up.
Exactly. Yeah. Even then, they didn't even go with Christmassy vibes very often. Yeah. So it's kind of a surprise because those movies, it doesn't matter quality; those are always going to make money.
Maybe this will just give us a chance to just watch Trancers again.
There we go. Yeah. Just a Merry Christmas. Watch Trancers again. Santa gets stabbed.
Well,
all right,
thank you again to Stevie Webb for taking the time, and hopefully we will see you guys next week for the 12 Sleighs of Christmas and a special secret bonus recording.
Secret even to us.
Stay tuned.
Killjoy 2.